picture view. Goodness always wins out. May take a little while. May not be automatic. But if you've got the ability to step back far enough, the power of good vanquishes, conquers the power of evil. There's innumerable holidays that we celebrate in the Indian Hindu calendar and in other calendars that celebrate that power of goodness, of divinity, vanquishing powers of darkness. So yes, they exist. Obviously, if you're thinking about going into learning how to do them, don't. I can't think of a more colossal waste of your time and karmic energy. Because of course, whatever seeds you plant of negativity, of harm, well, you're the one who's got to eat the fruits of those trees. You can't plant seeds in somebody else's garden. Whatever you plant gets planted in your garden, even if you're doing it to someone else. So ultimately, when that tree blossoms and the fruit is there, whether it's immediate, whether it's years later, ultimately comes back to you. So it's a colossal waste of time and a very poor use of free will, because all it's going to do is make you stuck in the future. In the moment you may feel like, yeah, got him, that, energy of vengeance. But that's what you would consider our lower animal instincts, right? I mean, animals harm others only when they've been threatened, only when either they need the other one to eat, it's their food source, or if they've actually been threatened. Then got him. He was going to get my babies, I got him instead. But the goal of life is not to behave like a bear or a lion or a tiger. I mean, it's the reason it's said that we've got human births is to be able to go beyond animal instincts. Beyond instincts of just anger and vengeance and an eye for an eye. So if you're thinking about going into the practice of it, don't. If you feel like you've been the subject of it, the victim of it, don't worry about it. It's something that with prayer, with mantra, with grace, can very easily be removed. So again, it's not that it's not there, but all you need to do to remove it, it's like, what do you do to remove the darkness in a room? Well, you turn on the light. You light a candle. Is it dark in the room? Yeah. Is it dangerous when it's dark? Yeah. Is it scary when it's dark? Yeah. Could you get hurt in the dark? Yeah. But what do you do about it? Well, you turn on the light. And if you don't know where the light switch is, you find someone who does. So if you feel like that's happened to you, turn to the power of light, of prayer, of divinity, of mantra, of holy association. And that power will very, very, very easily dissipate, dispel, vanquish that power of any kind of evil spell that someone may have done. So nothing to worry about. But yeah, it certainly can exist. It's just an opposite type of energy. And you feel it. I mean, if you're in the room or sitting next to someone who really hates you, you feel it. You know it. Just like when you're sitting with someone who really loves you, even if they haven't told you they love you. You know it. You feel it. So it's an energy. But it's not a very hierarchically high energy. And it gives us an opportunity then to realign ourselves, to heighten our own energy. If you feel like there's some of that negative energy, it's an opportunity for you to work on increasing your energy, raise your energy, so that nothing can bring you down. Beautiful. Great. Great place to start. Any questions? Yeah, of course. Come. And then we'll take you.
Firstly, thank you so much for your presence and your wisdom. It's honestly really a blessing. My question is less personal and more philosophical.
Sure.
The headline of the question is, who or what is God? And what is the goal of spiritual practice? Now, just for context, I think in my own explorations, it seems like everybody across all traditions agrees that the objective is, or like the point of life is to elevate consciousness and so on. But there seems to be disagreement. For example, I spent time in the Krishna Bhakti tradition a bit, and there's a lot there that God is, simultaneously, inconceivably different and non-different to us. God is a person and impersonal. And the objective, there's no objective really, it's just to love and serve God continuously and to grow in divine ecstatic love. And then sort of like my understanding of the Advaita perspective is that God is impersonal and forms are sort of a doorway, personal forms to get to the impersonal, and the objective is sort of nirvana or peace or enlightenment. Seems like a fixed objective rather than a process. So I was wondering if you could please share some light on that, because it seems like a bit of a contradiction.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Of course. So, a lot of points, actually. First of all, in the Vedic tradition, the Hindu tradition, what's called Sanatana Dharma by its adherents, the eternal Dharma, there's many, many ways of thinking about God. The idea that God is impersonal is one way. The idea that God is very personal is another way. And those who are, and there's other ways as well, but the idea that those who are worshiping God in what we call the Bhakti tradition of devotion and love, where God is very personal, they're not looking for an impersonal God. One of, but highlight, kind of icons, historical, actual living icons, is Mirabai, who was a princess, royalty. Great devotee of Krishna. Long story, beautiful story. If you haven't read about Mirabai, read about her and read her poems to God. Just the mystic love and devotion. So Mirabai had married Krishna when she was very young. The way that little kids play, she had an image of Bhagawan Krishna, and she literally married him. And throughout her life felt that she was married to Krishna. And even though she got married off into this royal family, in her mind she was married to Krishna. And all she wanted to do was sing Krishna's glories. And they did what all of the typical and traditional kind of evil step families do in these sorts of stories. And first they tried to convince her, and then when that didn't work, they tried to kill her. And they gave her poison But she, like any devotee, took Krishna's name before she drank it, offered it to Krishna the way that we offer anything to God. And her devotion was so pure that she drank the poison, nothing happened to her. They brought her a basket filled with a deadly snake, so that when she opened it, the snake would jump out and kill her. But to her, everything was divine, and she opens up the basket, and it's a flower garland for Krishna. Just stories like this. But I share it at the moment because Mirabai's physical life on earth ended with her being essentially hunted down, and she runs away, and she runs to the Krishna temple, into the temple, closes the door of the temple, and by the time they get in and break down the door of the temple, her shoes are there, and she has merged physically, not just in soul and spirit, but physically into the deity of Bhagawan Krishna. Now this is actually Indian history. This is not scripture or mythology. History. And I share it because if you said to her, well, I mean, you're carrying around this image of Krishna as the personal, but really ultimately you're going toward the impersonal, right? No. She's going through love of Krishna so deeply, of the personal love of Krishna so deeply, that her body actually merges into him, breaking all laws of nature, achieving all alchemical, magical, mystical, whatever it may be, feats, through deep love of the personal God. The lineage of bhaktis. It's moksha, liberation, enlightenment through love. They're not using their devotion as a stepping stone to the impersonal. Now, that doesn't mean that on a core deep level, they don't realize they are already one with God. But there's a difference between an impersonal God and an infinite God. Because actually what we believe, there's a lot of misunderstandings about the tradition. And some people say, oh, it's a polytheistic religion. Look at all these gods and goddesses. Then when people learn a little bit more, they say, oh, actually, no, it's a monotheistic religion. One God, many forms. But actually, it's not quite that either. Actually, we believe that there is nothing but God. Nothing but God. So it's not God is in us, it's we are in God. The core of the Advaita Vedanta teaching is nothing but God. This all of us, this is illusion. It's not just God is impersonal, it's we are impersonal. We are existing as illusory forms in God. It's one way of looking at it. But what everyone seems to agree on, regardless of their favorite way of worship or their philosophical path that they subscribe to, is God is infinite. There is nothing but God. And if it works for you to get into that infinite through love, great. If it works for you to get into that infinite through the impersonal, through just nameless, formless why not? If it works for you some other way, why not? Because it's all God. If it works for you to get there through hugging a tree, wonderful. If it works for you to get there through sweeping the floor, so be it. However it is. But just get there. So whatever works, but just get there. So that's really the openness of the way here that says it's all God. There's nothing that's not God. We don't believe in God as just a creator like an artist where God is over here and the creation is over there. But that the creation is manifest out of the Creator. Yeah, great. Yes.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for all this sharing that you shared on us as well. You opened a lot of doors. I have a personal question that as well is the very philosophical one.
Okay, great.
It's about Dharma. I think that I found mine, that became my truth. And of course I feel contentment, I'm in Santosha. But somehow I'm asking, should I stay in the good and not strive for the better? Because this is already fine. So like not looking for further improvement of myself as a person, as a human being, as a mother, as some other positions that we take in life. Or should, it's okay, if I believe that this is good for me, I stay, I wait for the next time on earth or something else. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. Both. Contentment, santosha, is not synonymous with complacency. It is actually the pretty much non-negotiable foundation of living in peace, of having a deep spiritual practice. Because if I'm not living in santosha, if I'm not living in satisfaction, then my mind is constantly going to be churning with what's wrong. And if my mind is constantly churning with what's wrong, I'm not going to be able to meditate. I'm not going to be able to see the goodness, the beauty, the divinity. We did a meditation last night or the night before on carrying the breath upward, right? To opening up our third eye. Now this energy center, the Agya Chakra, is the energy center of the power of discrimination. Meaning it enables you to see truth, which is divinity, rather than untruth, which is form. So we see content rather than form. I look at you. The ignorance says, beautiful woman. Because ignorance doesn't mean mean. You're a beautiful woman. So I look at you and my two eyes that see just form say, beautiful woman. But actually that's false. The truth is divinity. The beautiful woman, that's just your form, it's your package, it's your box. It's not the truth of who you are. God forbid you got into a car accident and, something happened and you were no longer beautiful. God forbid you age, like we're all aging. And at some point you look in the mirror and you say, oh my God, I'm not quite so beautiful anymore. The truth of who you are doesn't change. That divinity doesn't change. So, truth is divinity. This eye enables us to see truth, which is the divine, rather than different forms. Men, women, old, young, pretty, ugly, rich, poor, obstacle on my path, something I can use to get ahead, object to use, object to remove. This is how these two eyes function. The third eye shows us truth, which is divinity. However, if I'm in a state of discontentment, everyone I see feeds into that discontentment. How is she so beautiful? That's not fair. Right? God, I wonder what she does. That's not fair. I'm unable to see truth. If I'm living in discontentment, I'm going to want something. Oh, that person looks like a very good sexual partner. That can be an object I can use to feel better from my discontent for 10, 15 minutes. To get out of my discontent briefly, through lust, through greed, through whatever it may be. So if I'm living in a state of discontentment, I'm unable to progress on any spiritual level. I'm also unable to be happy or in peace. So contentment is a beautiful state, a critical state. And in many ways, is it the goal? Absolutely. But then once that goal has been achieved, it also becomes the means to further goals. So it's not that you let go of your contentment in order to achieve more, but it's that you recognize, who I am, whole, full, complete, perfect. We are good. And look at that. I could learn that. I could gain a new skill. I could improve my way of being a mom. I could learn another language. I could go deeper in my meditation. I could earn some extra money so that I could donate it to charity. I could clear my calendar so that I could spend some more time doing volunteer work. I could do seva. I mean, there's so many possibilities that spring out of the rich soil of santosha. Because if I'm discontent, then all I'm thinking about is what I need to be content. I'm not thinking about service. I'm not thinking about growth. I'm thinking about what I need to do to be more beautiful, to be more rich, to be more successful, to feel better about myself. Only once I've achieved that can I then begin to blossom into really all the other aspects of me. So don't embark on anything that's going to make you feel less than santosh in the moment. Don't buy into anyone telling you that you need to learn this because who you are in the moment is somehow less than. But recognize that this physical body, this karmic journey, has so many beautiful opportunities, skills, abilities, gifts. And you can refine them and you can use them further and you can develop more and more opportunities. Not because you need them in order to be an okay person. Not because you need them in order to be divine. Not because you need them in order to be full or whole or complete or perfect. But because in the perfection of yourself, you see the body, you see the lifetime, and you see all of the different opportunities to grow and to blossom and to serve. So yeah, keep growing. Keep growing, because interestingly, one of the greatest ways to stop being santosh is actually to stagnate. Because when you have the ability to give and you don't, it's one of the easiest ways to lose your contentment. Gifts are meant to be shared. And when you don't, there is a bubbling and burbling discontent that starts to brew inside you. So yeah, keep learning, keep growing, keep giving. Great. Yes.
Good evening. I have a rather practical question. I've been here for 12 days now, having a really wonderful time in Rishikesh, having learned a lot, met wonderful people, feeling this happiness and this uplifting energy.
Wonderful.
How can I bring this back home? I'm going to leave in 2 days, and I'm rather afraid of the disconnect that I might have when I will be back home. So that is my question to you.
Yes,
Thank you.
this is a perennial question. How do we take this back with us? So there's only one way I know of. You can't pack it in your suitcase. You can't ship it there in advance. The only way to do it is to carry it home in you as you. Which means that you have to actually let it become you. If all you've been doing is observing and enjoying, then you're not going to be able to carry it back home. But if you've been allowing yourself to actually be transformed, then you carry that with you. And that's the only way. While you're here, even just for another few days, make sure that the fragrance really, really permeates into you. And notice it. Be really aware of how you have changed, not just how good it feels. A jacuzzi feels good, but eventually you've got to get out. Be aware of how you have changed, not just how good it feels. Because you can't carry the jacuzzi with you. Right? You gotta get out, gotta go back. But this you can carry with you. So really draw your awareness while you're here. Sit on the banks of Mother Ganga and just notice. How have you changed? How has the very nature of you changed? Bring your awareness to it. Allow it to change even more. Really notice those parts of you that have changed, that have been touched, that have transformed, that have opened, that have healed. That's part one. Part two is planning. Part two is pure and simple pragmatic planning. There's a reason that Maya is spoken about as a veil. People talk about the veil of Maya. And that's not just an accidental or random use of the word. It is a veil. That illusion, it literally wraps itself around you. But I always think about it like a sticky veil. You know, sort of something that you've peeled off of, a sticky background. And so yes, it was a veil, but it was sticky. And so it wrapped on you and it stuck to you and sort of reached out and kind of even grabbed you. A veil with suction cups. And that call of Maya is most definitely going to try to bring you in. especially because you've been in it. So you've got habitual ways of living, of what you do, of how you think, of how you act. Be really pragmatic before you go. What do you need to change? Now that you know how you've changed, what needs to actually change in your life? Chances are your daily schedule is going to change, changes for most of us. Got to get up earlier in the morning to meditate. Okay. Okay, got to start sleeping earlier at night. I need to meditate before I sleep. I need to get up early in the morning. Just things like that. There may be a lot more. What do you do in your off hours? What do you do after work? What do you do on the weekends? Who do you do it with? What do you use your free time for? There's that great story of the professor who, in his classroom, he brings to the classroom this empty glass jar, right? You know the story, and he fills the glass jar with these big rocks. And he says to the class, is the glass jar full? And they all say, yeah, it looks full. And then he says, and then he takes little rocks and he pours them in over the big rocks. And they fall into all the little spaces left by the big rocks. And he says, now is it full? And they all say, yes, now it's definitely full. And then he pulls out sand. And he pours sand into the jar. And then the sand percolates into all of the little spaces that were left in between even the little rocks. And he says, now is it full? Absolutely, definitely, there's not, an iota of space. Then he gets a jug of water. Then he pours water in. And the sand absorbs the water. And he teaches the class, and it's such a beautiful moral, that jar is like our life. If you had poured in water first, there's no room for anything else. Even you try to get the sand in, the water is going to overflow. If you began with the sand, still no room for anything other than a little bit of water. But if you begin with the things that are actually most important in your life, which are the big rocks, fill them in first. Because if you first fill up your life with all of the stuff that doesn't matter, you find there isn't room for the stuff that does. And by the way, this is true not only about our time, but I have found even more important than our time is our thoughts. We fill up our thoughts with so much that doesn't matter. Nonsense, little nitty-gritty things. And there isn't space for that which does matter. So both in your thoughts and in your time, fill it up with what does matter. And whether you're making a daily schedule, a weekly schedule, fill it in first with what matters. The transformed you, what matters most? What are your big rocks? And then, all right, you've got some extra time. Okay, what are the smaller rocks? Things that aren't critical, but that are still important. Fill those in. So that you make sure that it's actually full, because you can be sure that when you get back, the water and the sand is going to be all over the place, blowing and pouring towards you, trying to get into your jar. And if you've already got your rocks in place, then it's all right, no problem. Okay, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Because you've got the main things in place. So I love that story, and just really use that. Sit on the banks of Ganga with a notepad and just plan. What are you going to change? What's the new day going to look like? What's the new week going to look like? What are the rocks? And you'll do it. You'll carry it back. And the last piece I would mention is the power of connection to that source that fills you when you're here. And whether it's connection to groups that meditate, that do kirtan, wherever you live, whether it's online groups, whether it's joining us online live for Arti and Satsang, whatever it may be, but make sure that you're plugging in to the source of that which feeds you. Because you need that. You need to keep recharging. And yes, it's all in us. And yes, it's really helpful. There's a reason that we emphasize satsang and sangha. You know, in Buddhism, the three most important things, if you look at this core chant and prayer of Buddhism, they say, Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. I take refuge in the Buddha. Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. It means I take refuge in the Dharma. Sangam Sharanam Gacchami. I take refuge in the Sangha, in this community, the spiritual community. So literally the three pillars that give us refuge are the divine, whether Buddha, whether Krishna, whether Christ, whether however we connect, whether nameless, formless. The teachings, the way, the truth, the Dharma, and the community. So make sure that you fill yourself and nourish yourself with that as well. Beautiful. आपका हम कल शुरू करेंगे आपके साथ, ठीक है? We'll start with you tomorrow. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening. A beautiful morning and day to our family joining from all over the world. And I look so forward to being together again tomorrow. So much love to you all.